Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Marc Morial. I serve as President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Urban League, the nation's largest historic civil rights and urban advocacy organization. Importantly, I am one of many descendants of those who were enslaved on this plantation, who today are standing up to oppose the Greenfield Grain Elevator Project. We are proud to be joined by a number of leaders, activists, concerned citizens. We are also honored to be joined by approximately 20 people who have connected to us via streaming. This is an event open to the media, an event designed to educate, designed to inform, designed to lay out the precise case why this Greenfield Grain Elevator Project is not good for the people of Louisiana and will have a detrimental impact on the environmental and cultural assets that are so central to St. John the Baptist Parish and the river region. So we're here to oppose this massive grain elevator complex, financed by an organization known as Engine Number One, which is an investment firm based in the Bay Area. This complex, as it is proposed, is massive in size, 248 acres, nearly 283 feet high, as the Statue of Liberty. As proposed, the grain elevator complex site surrounds both the Whitney Plantation Museum and the Wallace community and other historic Black communities, as well as other important historic plantations like Evergreen. As one of the descendants of those who helped to build the wealth of Louisiana, the enslaved Africans who were brought here from West Africa, from Senegal and Guinea. Some cases got here through Haiti, and other cases were transferred here from places like Virginia. We are morally compelled to stand up and say no to this project. And I want each of you to know that today we are launching a national effort to mobilize people of goodwill all across the nation, that the money and power of Engine Number One is no match. No match for the moral and cultural and historic case to ensure that what has been built here, the first time that a plantation has been converted to recognize the people who were enslaved on that plantation. We cannot allow this fragile, this embryonic asset to be negatively impacted in any fashion by any form of industrial development. And today we have a panel of folks to address various aspects of how this project is going to have a detrimental impact. For too long, the people of this region and the people of our beloved state have been sold a bill of goods. to trade their health, their safety, and the power of their culture for a handful of jobs. I'm here to tell you that this facility welcomed 110,000 people in 2019, and already this year, 40,000 people have come through the doors of the Whitney Plantation Museum. With the work that's being undertaken here, in the foreseeable future, there could be as many as 500 to 700,000 people who visit this museum. And imagine if the economic impact of those visitors were harnessed, it would exceed in multiples the 60 to 80 jobs being promised by Greenfield. So it is important. Down in New Orleans today we wait, tomorrow the Essence Festival begins. My administration started that as an idea, a concept to harness the cultural power of New Orleans' African American history. Today, that festival will have a $250 million economic impact on New Orleans and the New Orleans region in the next few days. So let us, as we talk about the historical, cultural, and environmental elements of this, let us understand that the economic opportunity and promise of seeing the Whitney and the Evergreen and other cultural assets grow and build would mean more in jobs, more in economic impact than this proposed grain elevator, which is sitting on top of a tax giveaway of immense proportions. Louisiana, it's time to do business differently. It's time to do business differently. So I'll talk later on after this discussion about the important steps we are going to take. But this panel of professional and community experts will explore how and why we got here. They will share facts that question governance, permitting, the environment, community health, the economy, and historic preservation. And we will be calling on each of you to take action to halt this project. We're putting the proponents on notice that things must be done differently. If the tragic murder of George Floyd means anything, it should guide how we think about the protection of this region's important and significant history. The history of this region, the elevation of the contributions of those who were enslaved, is not just about St. John the Baptist Parish. It's not just about Louisiana. It's not just about the United States of America. It is an international and global story. And that has to be elevated and understood. So with that, I'd like to call on Joy Banner, my cousin. And I want to give you the brilliant, compassionate, and committed co-director and co-founder of the Descendants Project, Joy Banner, who will take over. Joy.
Thank you. That's such a tough act to follow. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. We have a lot of members from the Wallace community that is here with us who have been fighting for the last year and a half to protect their homes, to protect their culture, to protect their businesses, to protect their families. And as a community, we have faced many challenges this year. We had Hurricane Ida. Many of us are still in the midst of hurricane recovery. I have not moved back into my home because a lot of my time has been spent on fighting the grain terminal. We have members that are here that have had medical issues throughout the year in addition to recovering from the hurricane. We have had illnesses in the family. We have had deaths in the family. So life goes on. We are already experiencing a lot of trauma. We're experiencing the good. We're still coming together as a community and we're enjoying each other. But I want everyone to understand that when these industries come in and threaten the community, they add another layer of trauma, a very traumatized community. Now, when we talk about the economic development, and that has been the main messaging from Greenfield, is that all of this is okay because they will bring in jobs. Well, I can't say that well, they don't need to say that all of this is okay because they don't address the many issues, the many problems that we have been bringing up with this facility, with this development from the beginning. And the first was that we were not told. The way that we found out about this massive complex, and if you want to get an idea of when we say massive, and we give people the 250 acres or the Statue of Liberty, that's to give you an idea of the scale of this project. But I think the best example, a picture says 1,000 words, right? So you can see on the side, there is a rendering of just how ginormous this facility is. 50 grain silos that's immediately adjacent to my neighborhood that has been there for over 100 years. My great-grandfather, my great-grandparents were one of the founders. My great-uncle was another one of the founders who purchased land. And we as a family settled around my great-grandparents. And we settled because we had a network, we had a community that was our family members. If something happens, we are there for one another. An emergency happens, 20 or 30 people from the community shows up at that person's house to see how they can be available to the family. So when we talk about communities such as Wallace, and to have people like Greenfield, companies like Greenfield, to have our own politicians tell us that you don't have anything. Y'all don't have nothing on the West Bank. Y'all don't have anybody. These are the messages that they're constantly telling us, that we have nothing. And the reason why they are doing it is because they are bleeding us out. They have already made plans for our land. They've already made decisions. They've already collaborated, colluded together, and they have already divided up our community and they have sold us out. And what was most infuriating and most disappointing about this project is that it was done with the support of some of our elected officials. Our own council member from District 1, Kurt Becknell, who is not only a family member, but who is a member of our neighborhood. He was having meetings with Greenfield, arranging meetings with Greenfield with his very own neighbors. His own family members did not know. And he made no attempt to tell us. And instead, this was an effort to get the community of people next to us, because these are tricks that are often used. They go to the community right next to your community, and you give them the jobs, you give them all the details of what you're going to provide for the community, to turn people against each other. So since March of last year, we have been fighting this grain terminal. And the way that we found out is because after hearing rumors of it, I reached out to Kim Terrell at Tulane Environmental Law Clinic. And I said, I'm hearing this, could you let me know if something comes on your radar? And we found out about this terminal that would completely ruin our community and our lives through the release of a joint public notice. Can you imagine what that felt like? I don't know if you've ever read a notice from the Corps of Engineers, from LDEQ, to see something so cold, to see the way that your land, that your community has been divided up, and the intent to put this massive facility right there on top of you. I had an emptiness in my stomach. My world changed that day. And it has been different ever since we found out about that information. And I just want to point out too, that we are, as wonderful as it is to have the mayor with us, and you're among a lot of cousins in the audience, and as wonderful as it is to have you all with us. Whitney is still an operating business. There are people that have paid money to take tours today, right? And so we are intruding a bit on the daily operations of actual businesses. So with the FIFA Lake Cafe, which is another business that me and my sister were able to open because there were visitors that were coming to Whitney Plantation. So we have people that have come from all over the world. We managed to sustain our cafe even through the pandemic, only to find out later that while we were trying to literally survive a pandemic, Greenfield was already working on our politicians. They had already sent them letters of support for them to sign off on this massive project. So they used the pandemic to their advantage. So we have had to interrupt our daily business operations. Whitney, I'm also the director of communications here. The last year and a half, I've not been able to truly fulfill my role as a director of communications because I've had to put out this fire that is Greenfield. This is during the time where we are recovering from the pandemic, where we had extensive, probably across the 100 or so acres of Whitney, including a portion that is not toured, we have damage to every single structure on this site. Every single structure, even the monuments that are made out of granite, were damaged during the storm. The Antioch Church, which is a historical Black church from Paulina that we had moved here, that congregation is still an active congregation. We almost lost it completely. We've had to spend extensive time and extensive money to repair it. So my job as a director of communications should have been fundraising for Whitney, which is a nonprofit foundation. So we are sustained by operations and by donations. John Cummings, who was the original founder, stepped down, retired in 2019. We are run by a predominantly African-American board, is a predominantly African-American staff. And so we really need the time that is taken away from our businesses, from our homes, from our families. They have a real impact. And we're going to beat Greenfield. I hope they know it. We're already beating them. Right, but even when we win, they have still taken our time, they've taken our energy, we've experienced health issues as a result of this. So we cannot let this continue to happen to our communities. I just want to give you a couple of positive points that have in recent developments before we talk to our panel. But we were very pleased that the Advisory Council of Historic Preservation released a scathing statement to the Corps of Engineers, who is part of one of the agencies, one of the major agencies for the permitting of this facility. And the ACHP was confused and was surprised that there wasn't more mention, there wasn't more communication with them for the preservation of the historic assets that are in the community. And what I really appreciated about that letter is that they acknowledged that while we have Whitney and while we have Evergreen as historic sites, they said that the community of Wallace, because we are descendants of the enslaved people, because we have kept that tradition and we kept that culture, that we in ourselves are historical assets that need preservation and need protection. Today, the National Trust for Historic Preservation came out publicly with a statement opposing Greenfield. I don't know when there's been a time that has so much support from our historical preservation, various bodies, where they are acknowledging how much the people contribute, right? And that's the way that it's supposed to be. So like the mayor said, we have to find a new way of doing business. We already have it. This is the new way of doing business. We don't have to sacrifice our health. We don't have to sacrifice our communities. We're on the site of a plantation. And yes, we are a slavery museum, but the fact that we had people, business was analyzed and evaluated by how many people were chewed up in the process. We have to change that. We have to realize that people are targeting us and they're looking at how many of us are going to get chewed up in the process. And they don't feel successful unless they see detriment and damage to us. And it's coming from a long way back. But the plantation economy is still here. That plantation way of thinking is still here. But we are calling it out. We are saying no more. And we're sitting here collectively and we're fighting. And today I have a wonderful group of panelists who are going to talk more about what we are fighting for and provide accurate information. All right. Okay, so first we have Justin Kray, who is with the Louisiana Bucket Brigade as an urban planner, cartographer, and a data advocate. And Justin has worked with us, it's been a long time, Justin. Since, and when I say a long time, like for the last year, but we've been through a lot already. Justin has been primarily the one examining our maps for us. We've had some errors and discrepancies in our zoning maps, that's putting it lightly. And Justin has been there to analyze those maps for us and let us know what was actually being illuminated on those maps. So we will get to Justin in a second after we finish introducing the rest of the panel. Then we also have Rodney Mitchell and his wife Angelique Mitchell is in the audience, who are Wallace residents, longtime residents of Wallace, whose history goes back to probably the 1700s like the rest of us. Their property and home, I really wanted to have them on the panel because they are the house that's closest to this monstrosity that you see. I can't tell you how many times Angelique has texted me. I've come over with my video, I've come over with Facebook Live to capture what's happening on the site. So this family has been through a lot, and I wanted to make sure that they shared their experience with you all. Next we have Ali Johnson, who is the manager of visitor services here at Whitney Plantation, who is one of my Whitney Plantation family. And I just wanted, Ali's story is so inspiring. He's been with Whitney Plantation since the beginning, which is in its modern day iteration as a museum. And I just wanted him to share his days here at Whitney when we were just opened and there are just a few people trickling in. And Ali was an interpreter to now where he has moved on up the ladder here at Whitney to become a visitor of manager services. So I'm glad to have him represent Whitney. Then we have Scott from Healthy Golf. Scott has also been with us since the very, very beginning when we first learned about the grain terminal. And Scott he's a scientist and he's been able to give us pages and pages of reports to analyze the impact to the environment and to the community. Scott has also set up a couple of air monitors at the cafe. So he's really been one of the people that has been there with us from the very beginning. Also from Healthy Golf in the audience is Michael E., who's also been one of those people from our very first community meeting that has been there with us. And then we have Judy Reese Morse, the president of the Urban League of Louisiana. The Urban League of Louisiana has served Greater New Orleans since 1938 with a mission to assist underserved communities in securing economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights. Really happy to have you here and to meet your wonderful staff that has recently become very engaged in this fight along with us. So we certainly appreciate your support and also you being here with us to share your knowledge and share your information. All right, so hand for our
Yay.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, you want to
I
come back up and
yeah,
ask
I think we're
questions, or
gonna-
you gonna?
Why don't you go first? You want to go first? You want me to go first?
So, Justin, I think very interestingly, if you could paint a picture of the tax fairness issue associated with this project, because what the parish has done is offer this project a significant, if you will, tax holiday. And I think it's important for people to understand what the taxpayers would give up in exchange for 60 jobs.
Sure. Hi there. Thanks for the question. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm so glad to be here. The arrangement that occurred with Greenfield, and it's remarkable that this happened in early May, so just over a month ago, while we were actually in litigation to kind of question the underlying zoning. And that's a whole other kind of thing which hopefully we'll get to, but this Port of Louisiana, Port of South Louisiana, which kind of governs, the activities in industrial development along the three river parishes, St. James, St. John, and St. Charles, worked out this cooperative endeavor agreement, which essentially is a sort of two-party contract. Well, in this case, it was also the sheriff, to create a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. And what that does is it essentially diverts the tax revenue, the property tax revenue that would come from Greenfields to St. John. Instead of going to St. John, it goes to the port. And it gives essentially this strange arrangement where no two normal people would actually kind of come into this kind of contract, where the port gets both the title of the land, they get the property and the assets, and they also get revenue, administrative fees. So they get the money and the property for 30 years. And in return, the Greenfield gets free license to use the property as, and also essential immunity, legal immunity from, people kind of questioning the arrangement. And there is some taxes that do go to St. John, but they go to the sheriff. And it's really questionable. Looking at the minutes to where this was decided, there was some very heated debate about whether this was a fair arrangement. And it's not a fair arrangement. But there's only one commissioner on the port that was really drawing attention to that. Everybody else, all the other commissioners, trying to push the project through to give a huge discount. And the discount, which we talked to Roderick Bagger of Together Louisiana, who's done a lot of research around the industrial tax exemption program and been a strong advocate for fair taxation of industry. Louisiana has a long, long history, as I'm sure everybody knows, of not taxing industry and finding loopholes for that. Well, as it turns out, recently, several years ago, the ITEP exemption closed. So the Port of South Louisiana has now developed these CEA arrangements to give a new loophole. So they've created a loophole that is essentially means that Greenfield, which would have paid $9 million a year based upon a fair assessment of what their property, it's a $500 million project, right? So if you kind of then take that, what that would mean in terms of the tax rules would be $9 million a year, but they're only paying $2 million a year. And so that's not even adjusted for inflation. That's $2 million over 30 years. And at the current, we all know inflation is a very real phenomenon. And that was one of the issues that we're trying to draw attention to during the hearing. If this was a 10-year agreement, maybe that would be something that, that the court would, but no, it's a 30-year at $2 million. And that $2 million is going down, in terms of what that's actual value.
So think about this. Think about this. Stay with me. I don't want to confuse anybody. In their permit application, it said 60 jobs. Presume that each of those jobs paid $100,000 a year, which they want. That would be $6 million. And this tax break is worth to them $7 million a year. So where is the fairness here? Where is, and you see, this is what I call Louisiana politics. Louisiana politics. And I can say it because I served in Louisiana politics, which is you give away the store and everything in it, and you don't get an equivalency in return. You don't get an equivalency in return. No state in the union, no city, no county, no parish does economic development like this. So the policies underlying this are not sensible, they are not smart, and regrettably, they are probably the product of an old-fashioned closed-door deal. So what he is doing is shining light.
Yes.
A big, big transparent spotlight on the arrangement here. And on top of that, they're asking the United States Department of Transportation to provide them with $25 billion in infrastructure dollars to support the construction of a docking facility on the river to accommodate the vessels that will take this grain in all likelihood to Asia and points beyond. So we have to be smart when we talk about this project to understand the economic arrangement around this is not beneficial to the taxpayers. Imagine what that money could mean if this project were to go forward to the schools of this parish, to the roads of this parish, to the affordable housing needs of this parish. So he's giving you the facts, and I've been involved in multiplicity of economic development deals all over the country. And this is one of the most obtuse, twisted, sideways arrangements that I've seen.
Yeah, thank you. It's very clear that it's not in the interests of the parish. In fact, one of the quotes that struck me most from the minutes where this decision was made was the executive director of the Port of South Louisiana, when speaking about whether or not the tax, the number was correct in terms of what they were agreeing to, because they decided on behalf of the parish. This was decided without input of the parish council or the parish president. In fact, that's one of the most alarming things, is they have that ability to do that reach. But Matthew said, quote, "It is the opinion of myself and staff that it is not our responsibility to negotiate the pilot on behalf of the taxing bodies." So that shows right there, they're not deciding for the parish. They're not, their interests are different than the community's interests. They may talk economic development, but that means something very different to them. It means the money that they get, the long-term lease revenue, that's their focus. So it's very clear.
Follow-up question?
Well, and one of the things that that Justin has been helping us out with, along with this recent Port of South Louisiana agreement with Greenfield. And by the way, this meeting was a special meeting. So there wasn't an abundance of public notice that this meeting was even taking place. The agenda itself was not very informative. It was all kind of grouped together. So we could not really discern what was going on. And in their agenda, they said they were considering a cooperative endeavor agreement, which considering and actually voting on are two different things, and it has to be spelled out in your agenda. So from the beginning, we've had little opportunity as a public to be able to voice our concerns, ask questions at the Port of South Louisiana meeting, but also our council meeting. We have not been allowed to be on the council. We've brought up to council members that we don't want this. Can we please have time on the agenda, and as it is our right? And we have been blocked from those council meetings. We have had no opportunity to actually have our concerns. But one of the other things that I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, Justin, sort of going back to the old days, is the zoning of this land. How did it become what the parish is saying, industrial? And what is the problem with the current state of the zoning of the greenfield properties?
Right. No, it's a real dirty deed that we're trying to address here. It's a 30-year-old, essentially, crime. It was Parish President Lester Millett who authorized and pushed through that rezoning for Formosa 30 years ago. This land, that was never reversed. So he went to jail because of his misdeeds, his extortion, coercion, self-dealing. I mean, he made money off that deal. So he went to jail. But the parish kept that on the books. So for 30 years, it's kind of been this sugarcane farm. And lo and behold, a year ago, we kind of tried to figure out, well, what's the history of zoning with this land? As it turns out, it's not so straightforward. In multiple points over the past 30 years, the parish records state that this was residential land. In fact, the most authoritative survey that we have from the parish records, from the actual certified clerk of court records I've got here, says it's residential, and that's 2006. Now, how do you, do title transfers and everything, and then have master planning saying it's residential? We found, depending upon where you go, you either find maps missing from the official records, stolen out of, books at the clerk of court's office, or the records say residential, agricultural. If you look at the PDF, depending upon which time or which area the website you look at, there's many conflicting records about the history of the zoning of this property. And so, in 2012 or 2013, the parish tried to do a master plan and then said, at that point, they said, okay, it's now industrial again. But the problem is that they published that map without reflecting the language of the ordinance in 1990, which has a buffer. And so they just said it's just heavy industry, whereas there was supposed to be a 300-foot buffer around that for light industry. As it turns out, that was never mapped properly. So this facility, as you can see in the rendering, is pushed right up against the side of the community. It's less than 200 feet away from the community. In addition to that, there's problems with actually how they're interpreting their zoning, because there's a distance requirement. Any heavy industry is supposed to be 2,000 feet away from any community that's over 1 development unit per gross area. Now, what that gross area means is, I think, there's some room for interpretation there. But I think you could say that Wallace is definitely a settled community that's 1 development unit per area. Now, 2,000 feet away would mean it couldn't be anywhere even close to here. It means it couldn't even be this side of Whitney. They couldn't develop the property the way that they want to if the parish was actually going to read their own ordinances and enforce them with any sense of common jurisprudence. But as it turns out, the parish doesn't seem to have a very clear idea of what their state of records are. And that's just been a glaring problem that we haven't really struggled to kind of get any clear answers on, which is why we're pursuing this court case with the Center for Constitutional Rights to really get the parish to just stop what they're doing. Say they can't proceed with this until we get the zoning figured out.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, Joy.
Well, and I just wanted to point out that while all of this is up for, again, we have not only this court case, but a couple of challenge the permitting and all. There is construction being done on site. There's been pile driving that has been done for the last year or so. So the National Trust for Historic Preservation, we have other concerned communities and agencies are stepping in and saying, why is there so much activity on the site when you don't have the permits yet? And the parish has refused to step in and stop. The Corps of Engineers said that they didn't have the authority, which is odd that the Corps would not have authority. I mean, it is the Army, right? But yeah, so that's the challenge, that despite everything, there's still activity that's on the site. And I think even Greenfield's own maps that they've referred to, that they've used in the purchase of their property, has their land as residential.
I got it here, if anybody wants to look at it.
Let's give Justin a round of applause. Research and a good, clear explanation for all of us. And Joy's gonna come up and introduce the Mitchell.
So in speaking about the fact that that facility is right up against the neighborhood, is the reason why I wanted to have, the Mitchells, amongst other things. They're wonderful, hardworking family in Wallace, and this has impacted them greatly. It's impacted us all. So I have Rodney Mitchell with us today, and so I just wanted to just ask you, what has your experience been like living so close to this facility site and seeing the types of activity that you've been seeing almost on a daily basis?
All right. First thing, as a worker, I've worked in the grain elevator before for a year. I've seen so many things where it will really turn your stomach. As to say, to see the things that goes on from the size of the rats that are huge, $1 million. And being where I'm at right now, that they're driving pilots, it rocks your home. The ceiling fans and stuff are moving. Everything is shaking. So as a time you're laying in your bed, relaxing, you're off from work, and you're being woke from pollen drive. And it's a constant thing. And as every time we have something going on, like we have this meeting today, they're grooming all around, they're cutting the grass. They're moving the crane, they're dropping it down, lowering the boom, as nothing's going on. But she started driving this morning at 6:30, 6:45 this morning. So as everything is going on, right now, they probably stopped again because this is happening. But the minute you're gone, it starts all over again. It's really disgusting because they're trying to take over, and I'm right. I mean, I can take a rock or a bottle and throw it in the crane. That's how close they are to me. So it doesn't make sense to try to put something on me that I wouldn't want to put on top of you. So why would you do us out community? Because what, we're right here in Wallace where they said we don't have anything. We have a lot. We have family. We have a close culture. But when you come back, you've taken the people away from us that's turned it against us, that's taken whatever green people giving them to say that, oh, this is going to be a great job. What are you going to offer? You can't offer a great thing. You're not going to give them the great job because Continental is the one that builds the grain elevators. That's the main objective right there. Give it to the people from the outside, keep the people away from the bottom. That's all they're going to do. Every time it comes down to offer us a job, we won't see anything. What can you offer? What you going to give the people over here? The sweeper job? The one like we had a guy that used to walk around, an electrician. So the guy used to come in, we used to call him the rat man. All he had a job was to take this thing and pick on the dead rats. What are you going to give all other guys? You're going to sit them out there on the dock, have them sweeping the grain, have them shovel it up, put it in buckets, and throwing it back over? That's not what our people need. You came to West St. John, you offer a scholarship. You offer a scholarship to one person to go to a Voltech school. All right, for what? What he's going to do? He's going to come out and then he has no job, but we're going to stop this. So where's his education going to go? So why are we going to do something that we can use, that we can't use, compared to something that we could use if our Parish president and everyone to come together and give us the necessities that we need, like give us gas stations, bring different businesses here. You can bring FedEx. They've been having all this property that said they were going to do for us. It hasn't happened yet because our councilman and all our other peers that's on the board doesn't worry about the West Bank. Everything right now, we go across the river, it's the East Bank. You have Chick-fil-A in Kane, they're about to put a Starbucks. Everything you look, it's something new for the East Bank, nothing for the West Bank. But you can try to crowd us, but bring an elevator that can blow up, just like when it happened. I think it was 76 when the Continental blew up in Chase Chalmette. What are you gonna do? You're gonna blow us all the way? That's what you want. So in other words, try to push us away, but then we're not leaving. Unless anything you have to do, look into it, read on it. If the people at Guard, where I come from, born and raised, if you come here and pay attention to what's going on, instead of letting Greenfield grease your pockets, you wouldn't know more. Stop closing your eyes.
And then, and Rodney, can you speak to the fact that there is tension in our communities?
It's very much a whole lot of tension because I have friends and family members, great friends I've dealt with, that I worked with, didn't work any houses for them. All of a sudden now they're with Greenfield. Now when you walk along me now, you walk along me, you're right by me. They can't speak. They don't know how to counsel because you're the people that I've helped before. All of a sudden now you're hurting me. You want to put this in front of my door. And I can show you the pictures right now. I can let you see my camera. You can see the crane and everything running from my house. It's right there. You can look at it. You can't miss it. But it's a whole lot of tension because they come to the school. They just, the other day, I think it was one of my guys came to me Monday, Friday. Oh, Greenfield was at West St. John High School doing a commercial inside the school. How does that go? How can we have them come into our community and do whatever they want?
That's why I say bring in Edgar. If
That's
so much
If you wanted to bring so much up, why didn't you come to the sugar house?
Right there, big into
You have a sugar mill. You have a whole sugar house if you want to
correct.
buy that. That property is up. It's
Correct.
open. Go there and get it.
Well, and you make a good point about what's happening along the West Bank, right? There is designs to get rid of all of us.
That's right.
And so the community next to us is Edgar. And again, that's who is being targeted as turning the Edgar people against Wallace. Well, if you go on a Louisiana economic development site, look at the land that is for sale or that is on their site as being advertised. It's all of Edgar. It's former plantation land. It's not Black-owned land. So again, it is, we're going to sell it all. Community is gone. And then what?
Nothing.
Nothing.
You still don't have anything.
And tell them there's just a gateway that, is,
That's it.
you get this here, y'all can see nothing about
Yeah.
everything else.
That's it.
all
That's gone. They're gonna be quiet. They're not gonna see anything.
Well, no, now you can't complain about it when it comes next to you
That's right.
because
You want it over here.
you didn't say nothing over here,
That's right. But look what's trying to come to them. They're trying to build a fertilizer plant.
Yeah.
Now they're saying they're gonna fight. It's coming.
Oh.
But it is coming. They said it's not. No, it's still in the making right now. They built that fertilizer.
Well, yeah, if the economy was better, it would have been there, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because the Russians own,
All that property.
Yeah, all that property.
And so one of the things that, and thank you, Rodney, so much for sharing the personal story about how this is impacting us as a community. But one of the things, and it's very challenging to keep your emotions to be level-headed. But one of the things that if there are people in Edgar that want to fight for their community, I'll be there to fight alongside with them. Because that is the trick, right? That is the way that people strategize to tear us apart. That we're going to target Wallace, and then when we go target Edgar, the people in Wallace are not going to fight for them. And they pick us off one by one. So I'm letting all of the Edgar people, I'm letting all of you in Vacherie through St. James, that anybody who wants to fight for their community, I hope you do. We are here to help you. We will give you the training. So, and thank you again, Rodney.
Because, I'm proving you can work somewhere else and still live here.
That's correct. It's just like someone that's with them right now. He worked at the grain elevator right now. He's doing commercial.
Yeah.
Why? Because he worked at the grain elevator, so Greenfield can grease your pocket also.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for free. Grant you. You're not going to speak for a company that you have nothing to do with. But you're saying, put it over here, give it here, but you don't live in that house.
Yeah.
A lot of them that's with Greenfield, some of them have moved. They live in different areas.
They can live
That's
here.
right.
They can live here.
That's right. They can work it. They can do it whatever they want, but they're gone. So why try
Did
to
you live where all the Chick-fil-A's and stuff?
That's right.
That's what they want.
That's correct. So why don't you come out community and give us what we really need? There's a lot of property that we can build up and build the right way, rather than trying to push us, put a grain elevator on top of it that doesn't give us anything. How are we gonna? You're gonna buy clothes from them? You're gonna tell you what are you gonna go to the store? What do they have there? You don't have anything where you can go close by. You have to travel and go and get a gallon of milk, carton a day, whatever you need.
North Shore, they're fighting a warehouse they want to build out there.
Yes, and that's something big, huge, right? They're fighting
But they don't want it over there, so, you know, get out of here.
Send it over here. It's nice to have that warehouse.
Well, and-
My house is.
And let me kind of open up the discussion, and since we're talking about the economics of heritage, of tourism and all, and the different types of alternative economies that we could have, I want to bring Ali into the conversation. And Ali, can you talk about how you got started here at Whitney, why you started working here, and what do you see, like, you've heard what we've been talking about so far, can you give us your perspective, being somebody that's working in the museum industry and in tourism?
I can speak to both sides, working in tourism and working in industry. I think the recurring thing I've heard every day.
It's like the electrician here. Go ahead, you want to put these at. And if not, we can just keep the mic. He has a big boom voice.
I really don't need the mic. I think just sitting here listening to everybody today, and through my work here at Whitney, my prior experience working at Whitney, working in industry, three recurring themes, even back to the point of the history that we talked about here at Whitney: divide and conquer, trickle down economics, and environmental racism against Black people. I worked in refineries 10 plus years, basically pretty much out of high school. I remember growing up here in St. John Parish. My parents are from St. James, Lutcher and Paulina. I'm descended from the Whitney Plantation. And you grow up and all you hear is your uncles that work in the plant, doing welding and stuff. But they started off in a time when a man could just drop out of school, go get a job at the plant and learn the trade on the job. And you grow up your whole life and all you hear, get you a job in the plant, get you a job in the plant, you're gonna be all right. And then you make 18 and you get a job in the plant and you realize you're not working for the plant. You're working for a contractor and it's not the permanent job. And if you didn't go to trade school and get the welding certificate or whatever, that you're gonna start off at the bottom as a helper 3 or a helper 4. It's not a constant job. I worked in the refinery making $20+ an hour in the 90s, which is supposed to be a whole lot of money, but it doesn't do you any good if you work 3 months and then you're laid off for 2. It doesn't do you any good if you work 84 hours a week for 6 months, and in the next 6 months you can't get another job. And so we hear a lot about, if we build this plant, we're gonna bring this many jobs. If they bring 60 to 80 jobs at Greenfield, that'll be 60 to 80 jobs that are for Greenfield itself. And I promise you, maybe 2 or 3 people from Edgar, if that many, will have one of those jobs. Everybody else will work for a contractor, and they'll be laid off every 2, 3 months, every 4 or 5 months, and in that same repetitive cycle. I've been here at Whitney March 1st, made 6 years. I started off just like in the refinery, bottom level at the turbo. And the difference between the refinery and here is that anybody that's here will tell you, I don't miss work. I don't call in sick. I don't come late. I'm here pretty much every day. I think I was here maybe 4 years straight before I was ever late. And it wasn't my fault when I was late. But in the refinery, I had that same work ethic. It's not something that I just picked up later in life. I've always had that kind of work ethic on the job. But in the refinery, even that didn't guarantee my job. When layoff time comes, it'll be one of us. It won't be the general foreman's nephew and grandson and son who they've got the job also with that contractor. Even though they miss every day after payday, and they come late 3 out of 5 days a week. And quite frankly, don't know the job half as good as 99% of the other people that are there and on time every day. And so I think we learned in the Reagan era trickle down economics is false. And if they bring this thing here, all this economic boom that they're talking about, they're gonna have what my friend right here said about the tax write-offs and the tax breaks or whatever is basically what it's gonna be. It's gonna be a big economic boom for people that already have money. It's not gonna be an economic boom for people like me and you who are just working, trying to pay bills and achieve and have something. You know, long time working in the refinery, being on time, knowing my job very good, and it took me forever to be, get in a position where I was considered somebody in administration or had a crew of workers. Honestly recognize that on paper and on the job site, because it's easy for them to tell you, hey, I need you to be a working foreman. And that's basically, you do everything the foreman does, but you don't get foreman money or benefits. And we have people that work as contractors in these refineries for years and years and years, and they make a lot of money an hour, but what they don't have is the things that really matter. They don't have benefits. They don't have health insurance. They don't have retirement plans. They don't have any of that. And I've been here at Whitney for 6 years, and I've had a retirement plan. I just started administration January 1st this year, but I've had a retirement plan for at least the last 4 years before 1K. I've had paid vacation, sick time. Basically what started off as a joke between me and the executive director. And I was honestly just joking. It was right after Christmas, and I was like, hey, Ms. Ashley, I don't need off for Christmas. I need to work. So if you just leave me the key next year, I'm gonna open the gate, open the door, I'm gonna run the front, get the tours and everything. And she came back to me like 3 days later. She's like, I know you were joking, but I heard what you said. So from now on, everybody gets 10 days vacation, 10 days sick time. That's the kind of job that we need in this community. We need people to be able to have a job, consistently depend on to be there. A job that if I show up and I do my job and I excel, that I will be rewarded for it in a meaningful way. The opportunity to move up, the opportunity to have benefits in a retirement plan. When that time comes and you can't work anymore, that you'll have the comfort that other people have, the people like Greenfield have in their job. And so I don't back Greenfield. I've never publicly even stated that really to anybody. But speaking to what Rodney was saying, just because I work here, people in this area have just stopped speaking to me that spoke to me all the time. The guy that rides his bike up and down River Road, whenever he would see me at the store, he would always speak to me, how you doing out here? Oh, I'm all right, just working. I don't see you working, go home. All right, man, take it easy. Passing on my way to work or coming from work, he's riding his bike on River Road. I pass by and grip my hand and throw his hand in the air and you ride. If I pass now and go there home, like you never seen me. And I think that's that divide and conquer, and that's used against people in general, but especially people of color. Environmental racism, something that people of color have dealt with forever in this country. Not just when we don't have anything, but when we start building something to have something.
Yes.
People come in and take us and destroy that. And I often point out to all young people in this parish, racism comes in so many different forms, not just the white guy that says, hey, I don't like you because you're black. But if you look at St. John Parish, every one of our housing projects has a sewage treatment plant right next to it. And I tell our young people, that's environmental racism.
Yep.
Because rich white people didn't want it by their neighborhood. And so you put it by the project. Who cares about them? And now they're tearing our projects down. They just bulldozed Edgar project. It's Hurricane Island. We got people who don't have nowhere to stay still from the storm, living in FEMA trailers. And y'all are bulldozing the project. And so I think Greenfield is just a continuation of something that we have been fighting for years and years and years and years. And I think it's just a blessing at the same time that we have people like Dr. Vanna and her sister, Ms. Joe, who are willing to stand up and get people organized to fight back, because a lot of times it's not that people don't want to fight back, they just don't know how. They don't have the tools, they don't have the power, they don't have the reach. And so it's just a blessing that we have people like Dr. Ben, Rodney and his wife, people that are willing to stand up, start a whole nonprofit. You know, as she says, back away from her responsibilities here to this great place and what we're trying to do here and fight for her community, which is in turn fighting for all of us. You know, we look at Marc, Louisiana, Shell blew them up and then bought them out. We look right across the river here in St. John Parish, Lions, where people who used to go to church across that track off River Road into the cemetery now got to go all the way on the airline, get permission from Marathon to drive through their refinery to bury a loved one that's in the cemetery that's now in the middle of Marathon's union.
Yeah.
And that ain't right. You know, just plain and simple. You know, what's legal, just because it's legal, don't make it right. And just because it's law, don't make it right.
Why Ali has people from all over the world that ask for him. After they take a tour, when he would give tours, I would get the emails. Who was that guy? I took the tour with the most wonderful person. And before we move on to Scott, I thought about an example. We have a council member that in his district, he voted to make it illegal for the grass to grow over 4 inches, and was one of the supporters of the grain terminal in this district. And so we talk about environmental racism, and we talk about how how racism looks different and how it's not as obvious sometimes. That's one of the things that stands out to me, that you're so particular and meticulous about your district, but for us, you can come and put something like this right on top of us. So next, speaking of the environment, Scott with Healthy Golf is going to talk a little bit about the environmental impacts that the grain terminal will have on air and also on water.
Here we go. Maybe I get this whole. It's an honor to be here at the Whitney Plantation. My name is Scott Eustace, I'm the Community Science Director for Healthy Golf. We're a 26-year-old nonprofit collaborating and serving communities across the Gulf Coast that have long been exploited for natural resources to reverse that exploitation and move toward a just transition. So it's an honor to be here at Whitney Plantation, where we see this place as a center for just transition for St. John and the parishes. We've objected to the various permits. Talk a little bit about air. I'm mostly here to talk about water, and then a statement from my colleague Jasmine Mall about the water pollution that this Greenfield Terminal project threatens us with. The air permit has been issued. The grain terminal puts out a lot of particulates. If you're a resident, it could mean as little as having to clean your house every week, like it does. But even after working in Plaquemines Parish, I've seen people move into areas with grain terminals that can get adult onset asthma in less than 10 years if they are susceptible. It can cause COPD and barrel chest, aggravate potential heart conditions that you may have. I'm not quite the expert on air impacts, but they are serious, and we are disturbed that this air permit was issued without an evaluation for environmental racism. We'll talk a little bit about the water in the front. Water is life. We're in an agricultural area. We get the rains that slowly go through the soil and go back into the swamp, where they produce more life. Flow into the Greenfield Terminal is being built in wetlands, so it would replace our natural nurseries for our fisheries, our natural water sponges, replace it with concrete that gets polluted. It's bad for that house in the front because you're replacing agricultural floodplain and wetlands, lands that used to soak up this rainwater, that we get. And now, land that fell on a residential area cannot drain to the back, cannot drain to the St. John Canal, which is not an industrial drainage. One of the follies of building industrial in an agricultural zone area. So you don't have industrial roads here, you don't have industrial drainage. The infrastructure has not been built to deal with the wetland and water impacts that paving the sugarcane fields can have. The terminal has a big rail component. That rail can be a very serious block to drainage in areas in the St. James Parish that we looked at. Having a rail behind your properties can increase your base flood elevation by up to 4 feet. So putting a new rail behind everyone, St. John Canal, if that's going to be blocked by a new rail system, Greenfield has to evaluate whether or not that's going to increase the base flood elevation of people's homes. When Louisiana Coastal Protection Authority looks at how much it costs to elevate homes, they estimate about $500,000 per house, like a struck fixture. So we need any potential flooding damages to be evaluated and assessed, because those could be damages to properties, especially if they're not elevated. I don't think this plantation, this commercial area is elevated at all. So industrializing the agricultural zone just puts water in the wrong place. We need that water to go to the back. Jasmine has written about what's in the back. It's Lac des Almonds. It's a place that, as a New Orleanian, I eat from if I go to the farmer's market and buy catfish from the man selling it. Lac des Almonds is the catfish capital of the universe, fed by a Grand Bayou and by the Chevron. The lake has been a significant resource for communities for generations. Fishermen and anglers of indigenous Choctaw, Chitimacha, and Homa peoples have harvested fish and shrimp to provide for families, even before a lot of people settled in 1721. The lake needs its bayous, canals, and swamps intact to provide those stable wetland habitats for the biodiversity that makes the river parishes great. It makes people want to come, makes people want to visit. These marshes and wetlands are our fish and shrimp fisheries. The grain terminal has applied for a water quality certification permit from LDQ, Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. The permit states there will be no water treatment on the site, meaning that all the industrial processed water and grain just mixes up and flows off without any treatment. The water will then drain directly into the surface of St. John Canal and directly into Lac des Almonds. There are chemicals such as fumigates and carcinogens and form of pesticides that will pollute these waters. And just the dust coming off, the terminal collects and goes into the lake, which affects its turbidity, takes all the oxygen out. This is the northern Barataria Basin. We already have issues where fisheries are not as productive as they could be because we have low flow and we don't have as much oxygen in the water as we would like. So dumping more grain and other pollutants into Lac des Almonds disrupts the fishery. The terminal is the latest instance of environmental racism here in St. John. We have Dow, Knoxville down the way, going into the canal. Valero, Mosaic up the way. All of that is draining into that drainage canal, and they all drain into Lac des Almonds. And simply put, we can't afford any more of this pollution into our capital of the world. And lastly, this terminal will be towering over Whitney Plantation. For all of the systems of oppression and slavery in this country, we have very few museums and memorials. The Whitney is a national treasure, and deserves to live in no shadow. So how can we not choose to preserve it? We have a choice. The government agencies have a choice a choice to take anti-racist action to stop this terminal. So we already have our fair share of problems with flooding, with water quality into the lake. Let's not make it worse. Let's not threaten the health of our communities. We can't threaten the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the fish we love to eat. And in the words of the late fisherman Tarzan McCurn, the Solomons has the best catfish they got in the world.
Yep, yep.
This lake we've got don't have any pollution to give the fish an oily taste. If they'd have a catfish capital of the world somewhere else, I wouldn't care to go. So let's keep it that way. Say no to the Wallace Grain Terminal. Say yes to a healthier future for St. John the Baptist communities and the generations to come.
Thank you so much, Scott. And one of the messaging that Greenfield is using is that they have all of the technology to make sure that the pollution, like the air pollution is reduced. It's still 119 tons of pollutants that will be emitted into the air. And how many of us from this community, and when these facilities want to come and locate in our areas, how many times have they told us we have the best technology? Not only will we not pollute, but we will magically clean the pollution of everybody else's pollution, right? We've heard this time and time again since the 1960s and 70s, but yet no, we are cancer rally. Our risk of cancer is higher than 95% of the rest of the country. And so what we have, when there's no one, the regulation of the environmental concerns are problematic. And as we've seen with Greenfield, and unfortunately, a lot of our politicians and a lot of our decision makers and regulators, they look at, oh, well, this grain terminal will be an economic boon, and that's it. They don't even consider the nuances of economic development, all of the problems with those statements that they make. But then they also use it as an excuse for them not following the legal process, and then also not monitoring the way that they should be. It should be monitored. So we've heard this before. But Scott, again, has been with us even before we knew about the grain terminal. Scott was writing in for those permits. The minor error permit that Greenfield received as a result of that issuance of the permit, we filed a Title VI complaint, which is part of the Civil Rights Act, which says that if there's any disparity in environmental issues and is impacting communities of color, then it triggers or can be Title VI violation. And the EPA is investigating. So that was a success. I know that we're talking, we're giving some gloom and doom because this is a very serious matter, but I do want to emphasize that communities throughout St. John Parish and throughout St. James, we are fighting back and we are winning. We are gaining a lot of ground. I think this time, I don't know when we've ever had a period where all of us have gotten together and we're putting together all of the different pieces, from the historic to the environmental to the economic. And I really think that this Greenfield case, unfortunately for Greenfield, but you will be well known as the poster child of what not to do. So I'm looking forward. Already, I think they're getting it. They're getting it good. And they'll get it even better. But on that note, I would like to introduce Miss Judy with the Urban League of Louisiana. And again, thank you for being out here with us in the river parishes and sharing information about your organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, George, for your incredible leadership. The Urban League of Louisiana opposes the grain elevator complex here in Wallace. I want to say that clearly, not only to the people of this community, but to the rest of the state of Louisiana and to the rest of the United States. I'm here to tell you today that this issue is not an issue that is just about the people of this community. The work that the Urban League of Louisiana does every day is about creating an environment where African Americans can not just survive, but thrive. That is the core of the work that we do. And I want to share something with you about the work that we do so that you know that you are not alone. We stand with you, we support you, and it's our job to amplify what you are saying about what you want to happen in this community. And that's exactly what the Urban League of Louisiana plans to do. You know, there is this thought that African Americans and other people of color don't understand policy, that it's above our heads, it's too complex, it's too confusing, that people don't have to go into the details of what is going to happen in a community, because that's policy and they won't understand that. Well, I'll tell you, that is absolutely false. That is inaccurate. African Americans absolutely do understand policy. We do understand the details. And I think this case is an example of what we are not going to allow to happen. We're not going to allow things to happen to our community that we don't want. And how disgraceful that people are not even given the opportunity by the people that are elected to represent them to speak their voice and to share their concerns about what's happening in their community. That is unacceptable. And I want the people of this community to know and to understand that our job at the Urban League of Louisiana is to support what leaders of this community want to do and need to do and are doing every day, the sacrifices that they are making. And we want to let other parts of the state know what's happening here. We want to let other parts of the country know what's happening here. And that is how we intend to support what is going on in this community and to support the leaders here. We do understand policy. We do a tour around the state of Louisiana, and we've actually created a statewide policy conference that focuses solely on the African American community. We talk about the policies, to include policies like environmental racism, economic development, health equity, criminal justice reform, housing, transportation, and every quality of life issue that impacts the African American community. That conference grows stronger and bigger every year. We even have people outside of Louisiana who want to know about what's happening here in the state. We want to bring resources to this state, to communities across this state, so that people can thrive, not just survive. And so we want to help to take what the Descendants Project is doing and other community leaders are doing and help to let other parts of this state know. Because one thing that I can tell you from our work, what happens in one part of the state is not just about that one part of the state. That when people find out what's happening in other communities, there's solidarity and there can be support from others who understand the kinds of issues that you are dealing with here, and who also would not want these kinds of concerns to be their concerns. And so you said it earlier, Joy, beautifully. People are coming together. The fact that you will take what you've learned and share it with other communities when appropriate is exactly the kind of thing that we have to do, and it's exactly the kind of thing that the Urban League of Louisiana wants to be able to support. So thank you for allowing us to stand with each and every one of you and everyone in this community. Thank you for allowing us to serve. It is our honor to be able to do so, and we will give you everything that we have in order to support the work that is happening here.
Let's put our hands together for a brilliant, that has also been moved to feel the power of the people. We are David. We are David, and we're standing up to Goliath. That is what we are doing today. So I'm going to offer a few concluding remarks, and then Joy is going to join me and identify my details on how everyone can be involved and be a part of this fight. I first want to say, on behalf of the National Urban League and the Urban League of Louisiana and our unified movement, which operates in 36 states and the District of Columbia, which includes tens of thousands of volunteers, over 2,000 employees, over multiple millions of online supporters. We are standing and putting our full weight and credibility and energy behind this battle. This battle is now going to take on a national dimension. I want to add a comment about engine number one. And this caught my eye when I initially learned about this project. Engine number one presents itself as a woke capitalist. And last year, they successfully ran a campaign to direct it at the shareholders of Exxon to change the board composition at Exxon, and also to get Exxon to recognize climate change in a more profound way. And I thought it was inconsistent and hypocritical that they would, I think, present themselves around the nation as a woke capitalist and then involve themselves in a project that would be environmentally racist. Amen. A project that is going to impact air quality, water quality, cultural quality, the quality of fishing, and also do it in a way where there are integrity issues. This morning, ProPublica revealed that a consultant that Engine Number One had hired to evaluate the impact that the project would have on the historical and cultural integrity of this area and its impact on these plantations, that after the report was prepared by the independent evaluator, was now a whistleblower, that the report was altered before it was submitted. What Engine Number One should do today is withdraw its financing for this project and abandon this project, because we're not going away. And we have just begun to fight. Fight for what is right, fight for what is just, fight what is important. This is not 1990. This is not the year 2000. This is 2022. And we're prepared to stand up because of the importance of sending a powerful and strong message. Now, I realize from listening that in this community, people may be somewhat divided. But we have to work to help people understand that there's a better way to do jobs. There's a better way to do economic development. There's a way to do it that doesn't affect our health, that doesn't affect the quality of our air, the quality of our water, impact. And it was profound to hear you talk about pile driving in the middle of the night. Because one of my recollections was when the explosion took place about 30 years ago. I'm trying to remember where it was. Sure. I was living in New Orleans on Esplanade Avenue at the time. And my blinds and windows shook vociferously. And I said, are we having an earthquake? And it was mysterious. I didn't know if Freddy Krueger had come in. Some monster. But all this to say, we are beginning today, and I want everyone to know there's a great deal of power in our feelings and our emotions, but there's a great deal of power in our facts, which have been carefully laid out here. And so we're going to be asking people all over this community, the state, and the nation to join us in this fight. And it is doubly troubling for me to hear that elected leaders did not engage in a conversation with their own constituents before supporting this project. Troubling. That the proponents of this project also didn't come into this community and talk to people about what they had planned before they hatched this plan. So we are just beginning, and I want to thank Joy for her brilliance. I want to thank the team here at Whitney. I want to thank the team at Whitney for honoring our ancestors and descendants and all of the people who toiled here in the 17 and 1800s to create the enormity of wealth. And that is why we must stand up. We must stand up for the integrity of our ancestors, the integrity of those who toil, because we must ensure that their stories are told with truth and with integrity. So Joy, we're going to launch an online petition.
Yes.
And Joy's going to come and talk about it and how we can all be involved. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And I do want to thank, again, Mr. Mayor, cousin, fellow member of the Descendant community here in Wallace. Thank you so much for joining us today and for putting your support behind this effort. Like I said, it's been a tough year and a half for us. And, we have just been relying on our hope, just been doing the work, communicating a lot with each other to keep our spirits up and getting and collecting those facts. And it's so important to have not only you, but for all of you that are with us today, all of the people that are sitting here, to have your support when we have felt very alone at times. It's been a very, again, an emotional year and a half. So it really does mean so much to have your support. And I do want to also thank the staff at Whitney. So I think they were in the back. So we have the Director of Education, Amber. I see Kray that's back there. We have, again, Mr. Ali, and all of the staff here at Whitney. Thank you so much for allowing us to sort of interrupt the day and again, and have this opportunity and have this space for us to be able to have this. Again, this is what it means to be an organization, have to provide space for community members to have these types of discussions. So what we are doing is we're launching a petition on change.org. It is in opposition to this grain terminal. It's asking the Corps of Engineers and other permitting bodies to deny the permits. Those agencies that have provided permits, we are asking, the revocation of those permits in light of the information that we are finding is trickling, but it's trickling faster and faster, that Greenfield has not been honest about, right? And one is that cultural surveys report that they were required to do, which is a federal requirement for a Corps of Engineers permit. And according to the person that they independently hired, Greenfield was pressuring her and her company to omit some of the important findings in that report. So we do not know what is in that report. In an article yesterday, we are grateful that the Corps of Engineers is requiring Greenfield to do another survey. But again, how do we move forward if we have a company that has kept communication away from us, who deliberately left us out of the process, and then they essentially they're accused of lying, not only to us, but to the federal government, right? And so we expect them to be held accountable. Because if we lie to the federal government, we know what happened. We can't lie on our taxes. We can't lie on any form that we turn in. And so we expect the same type of accountability for them as they would give us, right? So we're launching the petition on change.org. If you go to the Descendants Project.org, we'll also have it listed on Whitney's site for you to be able to access that petition. We are hoping to get, and we know, not hoping, we will get at least 100,000 signatures. So again, like Mr. Mayor said, that this is a national effort. And so we want to show the folks at Greenfield, at Engine Number One, and all of the various agencies that we are not going to stand down. We're going to continue fighting, and we're going to continue to win, and we're going to be an example and a resource for other communities who are feeling alone the way that we felt in the beginning of this fight. So again, we'll have more information. Please follow us on social media. That's a great way of being able to find out information and track the progress, and also share our petition.
I just want to do one thing. I want to thank Denise Stokenau. Where's Denise? Denise here. Thank Denise and the part of our social media team for working and helping to pull this together today. I really appreciate. On short notice, this has happened. So thank you all very much.
Thank all of my so many community members here in Wallace, and my cousins, my parents, Harriet and Johnny, and again, just thank all of you who are here in solidarity and support. And stay tuned for late breaking news, and let's take a group picture.
Let's get back here. Who's got the best? Back here, maybe. Let's take a group picture.
Let's all convene in the back there. Again, thank you all, and also thank you to our people online.
Oh, yeah. Hi. You ready?